everyone. Wayne from the Saturn Earth and Space Center here. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at one of the gas giant planets in our solar system. You can see it right behind me. It's the one with the rings, and that is Saturn. Saturn is a very interesting planet, not just because of those rings that go around it, but a lot of other things too. So first, we'll take a look at where to find it in the sky and what it will look like through a backyard telescope, and then we'll fly in and take a closer look. So let's get started now. Here we are in front of the Saturn Earth and Space Center on Triton College. You can see the Space Center is right in front of us, here towards the west. And if we turn and face towards the south, then we'll see our bright moon, a very bright Jupiter, and just in between the two is a little bit less bright object, and that is Saturn, what we're looking for. So it'll be right in between the moon and Jupiter on October 23rd, right around 8 o'clock, which is about 2 hours after the sun sets. So the sky will be nice and dark, and as long as it's not too cloudy, you should be able to get a look at it. If you have a halfway decent telescope, you can get some great views of the planet Saturn. And we'll bring on our telescope simulator here. And even with a halfway decent telescope, we can see those beautiful rings that go around the planet Saturn, as well as some of its moons through a nice telescope as well. Now, even if you don't have a great telescope, you can still get some good views, even through a nice set of binoculars. You can see it, and it won't look quite as round as, say, Jupiter does through those binoculars. You might see it looks a little bit oblong shaped, and that's because of those rings. Some of the earliest observations of Saturn, they said it looked like the planet had ears coming out of the side of it. So pay attention for that. No matter what you're looking at it through, you can still get some great views of Saturn. But now let's fly out and take a look at Saturn and maybe take a closer look at those rings for ourselves. So here we are using Digistar 6, our planetarium software, and we're going to fly to Saturn and take a look at it for ourselves. Saturn is the 6th planet from the Sun in our solar system, so it is just beyond Jupiter. And it is a gas giant, much like Jupiter. It's a little bit smaller. Whereas Jupiter can fit 11 Earths across its middle, Saturn can fit 9. So it's a little bit smaller than Jupiter, but still just as fascinating. It is made of mostly the same things. It is helium and hydrogen gas that makes up most of the planet. And Saturn also has a good number of moons. In fact, we have discovered more moons around Saturn than we did around Jupiter so far. And we'll take a look at one or two of those moons when we get a little bit closer, because there are some rather interesting ones around Saturn. As we fly up to Saturn, we'll see those beautiful rings coming into view. We can see the bands of clouds in its atmosphere, much like Jupiter has. There aren't any really great big storms like Jupiter's Great Red Spot, but there are some very interesting patterns, especially around the poles of Saturn. There are some interesting hexagon patterns around that star, around that area. And here we get a good view as the sun backlights the rings. We can see the separate bands in that ring structure. Now, those rings are made up of ice particles. Now, many of the planets have rings. All of the gas and ice giants do. But Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, their rings are all made of dust and dirt particles, which aren't very reflective. But Saturn's rings are made of ice particles, and those are very reflective. So we get a great look at those reflecting that sunlight back to us, and that is why Saturn has such beautiful rings. Now, like I said, Saturn does have some rather interesting moons, and one of those is going to be its moon Titan, and that'll be the one that we take a look at here in our little video. So let's fly out and take a look at Titan. Now, Titan is a very interesting moon around Saturn because it's about planet-sized. It's bigger than some of the smaller planets like Mercury, but it's orbiting Saturn instead of the sun, so it is a moon instead of a planet, but it is a rocky moon. It's sort of Earth-like in its structure. It has an atmosphere as well, but it can't support human life because its atmosphere is made up of methane. There's very thick clouds of methane around that planet. We can see it. And if we were able to go under those clouds, we would find great lakes and seas of liquid methane on its surface as well. So it's a very interesting planet. It's one that we're looking at for possibly supporting life, not as we know it. But there are other more promising areas to look for signs of life in our solar system. But Titan is probably one of the most interesting moons around Saturn. One of my favorites, definitely. Well, like I said at the beginning of the video, Saturn is a very interesting planet, and not just because of those beautiful rings that go around it, but it has some very interesting cloud patterns as well, which you can see some of behind me. Now, this is what we call the hexagon of Saturn. It's on its north pole, and it's a very interesting storm system where the clouds actually seem to form a hexagon going around that north pole area. It's a very interesting storm system. We're not entirely sure what causes it, but there have been several hypotheses about what it might be. But we're still trying to learn more about Saturn. The Cassini probe was the most recent spacecraft to visit the ringed planet, and it sent back some really great data before it dived into its atmosphere and burned up in the clouds of Saturn. So, very interesting project, the Cassini mission. But thank you for taking a look at the planet Saturn with me. Again, my name is Wayne from the CERN Earth and Space Center. I hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope you come back next week for another one. But remember, you really want to get out there and take a look at the real skies for yourself. So make sure that you go out and do that. Thanks once again.